Hello. Today we are going to talk about a popular JavaScript interview question: null versus undefined. There are several differences between null and undefined which are sometimes understood as the same. So null versus undefined, these are both data types in JavaScript. So first of all, they are data types. In JavaScript, undefined means a variable which has been declared but has not yet been assigned a value. So what does that mean? So if I am declaring a variable, so let y, this is declared, but I'm not assigning it any value. So this by default will be undefined. I can show you by consoling it. So if I let's refresh it. So if we check, it is undefined. Y is undefined and this is comma y. If I write that, refresh it again, this is undefined. So null, now let's talk about null. Null is an assignment value. It can be assigned to a variable as a representation of no value. So if you are declaring a variable, by default it will never be null. JavaScript never sets a value to null. This must be done specifically in your program. So if I'm writing let y equals to null, now if I console it, obviously it will be null because I've given it that value. Let's refresh this so we can see it is null. So we have to specifically write that it is null, but with undefined that is not the case. Now let's talk about null versus undefined type. Like what is the type of null and what is the type of undefined. So if we write console.log type of null, it will give us object. So the type of null is object, whereas if you write console.log type of undefined, it is undefined. So you have to keep this thing in your mind that type of null is object but type of undefined is undefined. Now let's check if they are equal or not. Let's write console.log null equals to undefined. It is giving us true. So with equality operator, it will give us true. That means they are equal, because with equality operator it is giving us true. Whereas if we write console.log null equals to undefined, it is giving us false. So with identity operator, it is giving false. So they are not identical. This simply means that they are not identical, but they are equal. So what we can say is null is equal to undefined, but it is not identical to undefined. When we define a variable to undefined, then we are trying to convey that the variable does not exist. So if I'm writing, this means this variable does not exist. But when we are writing, this means that the variable is empty. Oopsie, we cannot find the same. Yeah. So when we define a variable to null, then we are trying to convey that the variable is empty. Now let's differentiate using isNaN. If I'm writing console.log isNaN undefined, Oh yeah. So it will give me true because undefined is not a number, right? It is not a number. So it is giving me true, which is perfect. Now if I'm writing console.log is any n null, it's giving me false because it is a number probably. Why? How? Because if you try console.log null plus 5, it will give you 5 because null is treated as empty. Whereas if you write console.log undefined plus 4, it will give you any n because it is not a number. Now let's try some examples. So what we can do is, first let's remove all of this, and over here let's write some code. We can write null if null, then console.log true, otherwise console.log false. So when we wrote if null, then true, otherwise false, we got false. So we can say that null is also referred as false value. Okay, so null is referred as false value. We can say const y. Okay, so when we define what happened? What we can say is when we declare a variable, it is by default undefined, right? So this is undefined. If we can also check that console.log y, which will be undefined. Okay, so we know this is undefined. So what we can do is if y, then console.log true, otherwise console.log false. So even here we got false. So even this we can consider as a false value. But if we write that y is equals to undefined, if this condition is true, then console.log true, otherwise false.